Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. As businesses recover from the worst of the pandemic, many are considering the best way forward and whether there's an opportunity to innovate and do things a little differently. Today, I'm talking to one of Australia's business leaders about just that. Luke Sayers was the CEO of PWC Australia for 8 years, taking on the role at the relatively young age of just 42. After his second 4-year term as CEO, he could have put his feet up or picked up a few positions on company boards. Instead, he's gone out on his own, becoming the founder and executive chairman of Sayers, an advisory and investment firm with a focus on innovation. Just under 12 months in, it's growing quickly, and now Luke is looking to inspire other people and companies to innovate more, scale up, and commercialise much of the research and development that's already been done. Luke Sayers, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Good morning.
You've got to tell me, after 8 years running PwC, why did you decide to go out and start your own business?
Good question. Look, I'm a fairly active person, and so the thought of sort of putting the feet up and just sitting back and playing a bit of golf, that's just not me. And I just had plenty left in the tank. The challenge for me was to kind of figure out what was going to work for the family, what was going to work for me, and what was going to kind of continue to make me grow and learn and develop going forward. And so it was a pretty difficult process leading up to leaving PwC. It was about a 12-month process that I worked with some external counsellors, and my wife actually went through that process with me, just really trying to understand what this kind of third chapter in life was all about. And bottom line was to sit on a board and to be on boards and do that thing just wasn't right for me at this stage. Running a large bureaucracy or a large listed organisation, just didn't want to kind of go through that process. Very similar sort of culture and process to a large PwC. And so the thought of starting something with a blank sheet of paper and building something unique and different and culturally kind of more aligned to who you are, got me super excited, and here we are.
Okay, so you kicked off Sayers. So it's advisory and investment, is that right?
Yeah, so look, we've got a number of businesses, but ostensibly there's a wealth sort of part of the portfolio, and so that's basically investing clients' money domestically and also internationally. And then we've also got another part, which is an advisory and investment part, which is advising clients on doing better things, as well as investing our money into those various businesses. And so it's a combination of both.
Okay. So, I mean, you launched this in the middle of the pandemic, which I think is really interesting. And in some ways, not a bad time to launch a new company, because if it can make it through, there should be upside on the other end of it. But how hard was it to launch it in the middle of the pandemic and just to build some momentum?
Yeah, look, it was hard, and it still is hard. A lot of people sort of say, hey, Luke, we're seeing that you're growing and things seem to be going well. And all of that is true, but it is really, really hard setting something up, structurally, governance-wise, financial-wise, getting the foundations right, and then kind of opening the doors and bringing on awesome people and attracting awesome clients. It's not an easy process starting something from the ground up. And this is what was exciting for me. Having been in a global system like PwC for 30-odd years, the thought of sort of untangling yourself from all of that and trying something on your own with a blank sheet of paper, it's just super exciting for me. Also very daunting. And I got to be honest, every day, there's hardships, there's fear, there's excitement, you got it all going on. But the pandemic threw an extra layer of kind of complexity on the one hand, because you couldn't go and meet people and you couldn't see clients and you couldn't do things like you normally would. But it also provided a great opportunity to focus on the foundations of the business right from the start, and all of the things that you do need to be kind of best practice structurally and organisationally, we were able to get done in a swift amount of time and come out of the gate in late November period, feeling good about the bones and foundations that we'd set in place.
Is it difficult to be running such a big organisation like PwC and then find yourself doing your photocopying, being a bit euphemistic there, but literally when you're starting up a business, I mean, when I left Fairfax after 20 years and I'd sort of done okay at Fairfax, I certainly didn't do much photocopying. And I literally, I felt like someone from The Castle, the movie, with the printer at home. Like, it was the same sort of deal in a sense. Did you feel that?
It's a great call out, because yes, you feel it. In large organisations, you've got teams of people that have the right technical expertise and the right time and so on and so forth. And obviously when you're starting something on your own, you're not going to be spending cash on a lot of those things. And so ultimately you end up doing it yourself. And so I'd find myself some days on the one hand dealing with kind of prime ministers and treasurers and premiers, and then on the other hand, going and trying to figure out whether you put a coffee machine in the kitchen at the office and everything in between. So yeah, you're right on the money.
So given we've had the pandemic and it continues, but hopefully into 2022, it will not quite be in the rear vision mirror, but it certainly will be past the worst of it. Is now a good time for business to change the way they operate?
Look, I think it's a fantastic time to be in business. You know, whenever you've got sort of an external event like, you know, we've got all over the world with COVID, it's forcing companies to look at doing things differently. You know, how can they get lower on the cost curve? How can they change their processes and their systems and the way in which they do things through the use of technology? How can they invest in maybe other sorts of businesses in the future as opposed to ones that they historically may have looked at? And so it is a catalyst for change. I do absolutely subscribe to the fact that we're going to come out of this at the back end of COVID in almost like a modern day gold rush era. I'm very optimistic about the upside once we get through this period of difficulty. There's tons of money washing around in the markets. And I also do think that there's a trend that's, you know, the world used to be global, global, global. It's now trending to kind of local, with much more focus on local businesses rather than global businesses. And I think that's also great for local Australian businesses that are trying to differentiate, trying to disrupt and trying to do something here which really can add more value to clients. So I'm pretty positive about what this global pandemic will create as far as business opportunity.
And do you think Australian businesses are grasping that opportunity?
Oh, look, I think every business in Australia, whether it be large or small, and I'd also call out the government bodies as well, are looking at it and trying to figure out what does the new world mean? How can we use platform-based technology to change the way in which we've historically done things? How do we not just revert to doing things exactly the same way through headcount and bringing on extra headcount once we come out of this pandemic? So absolutely, they're all looking at it and trying to figure out the innovative, new, creative ways of the future.
Stay with me, Luke. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Luke Sayers, founder and executive chair of Sayers. Now, one thing you're doing, Luke, you're about to launch Sayers' new Quo Index. Is that right pronunciation? QUO, Quo Index?
Yeah.
And you're looking...
You like that?
I do.
That's basically saying we're restless and bored with the status quo and we're all about new quo.
I like that. New quo as opposed to status quo. That's very good.
That's it.
And it is about measuring the latent opportunity in specific sectors. So just tell me about new quo. I'm going to start using this phrase too. I'm going to steal it from you, Luke.
Perfect. So, look, if we were to commercialise our already developed R&D in Australia into the biggest businesses, there is a potential to increase the country's GDP growth rate by 1 whole percentage point over the next decade. Between the Internet of Things, big data, digital automation platforms, leaders are rapidly moving to deploy new technology to remain competitive in the digital age. And post-COVID, this 1% difference would deliver some $200 billion to our economy over the next decade. And so, you know, we're currently leaving money on the table with latent value left untapped in our economy. And so this is a simple, quick win. And it goes back to your previous point. You know, how do we come up with new and different ways through the use of tech to get at these latest R&D opportunities to go after the opportunities there? And so Sayers is developing an industry tracking index to find the latent opportunity in specific sectors, and we're going to release that information later in the year.
So do you know what sector, or do you suspect what sectors there's this opportunity at the moment?
Yeah, so we're looking at financial services, we're looking at mining, we're looking at resources, we're looking at the services sector. We've cast the net wide and far, and by the time we release the information, we'll have a handful of sectors that we think very much are those opportunities that we should be pursuing at a country level as we go forward.
So you're clearly an optimist, Luke. Are you optimistic about Australia's potential in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years?
Yeah, I am. I'm super optimistic. We've got highly talented and capable people in this country. We're absolutely trying to pivot away from being just dominantly focused on resources and mining and pushing more into other services areas. And I think with the right government support and the constant innovation and entrepreneurialism, I think we've got an amazing, amazing future.
Government support, I totally agree. The government needs to create the framework, but it's very difficult for government to keep up. Now, an example in the last week has been Apple and Commonwealth Bank of having a bit of a barney over access to the iPhone chip and whether Commonwealth Bank can access that chip to use that as a payment system. I'm not asking you to comment on that specifically, but I mean, the government is going to have to at some point regulate on that one way or another. It's very difficult for governments to keep up with that stuff.
Oh, look, it is, and especially in the technological era that we've got today. Technology is changing at such a speed and such a pace for our federal government and governments around the world to respond to those sort of technological advancements is very, very difficult. But there's more and more effort and more attention and more investment into keeping up and making sure from a regulation perspective and also an innovation perspective, this country continues to move forward. So I am optimistic, albeit it is difficult sometimes.
So you've run PWC, you've now started your own business. I think that was all just training ground for actually taking over as president of the Carlton Football Club.
Yeah, I've gone from 750 partners that I each and every day had to try and keep moving and focused and doing good things to some 85,000 members that now we need to kind of keep on track and moving forward to winning more games and winning finals and ultimately winning a premiership. But it's a great opportunity and one that I'm incredibly honoured and proud to be in.
And you're also made a member of the Order of Australia for your service to business and to the community, particularly people with a disability. Clearly that's important to you.
Yeah, my second daughter, we have 4 beautiful girls. My second daughter was born with Down syndrome and we found that out on day 2. And it was a shock period for about 30 days as Kate and myself got our heads around what does this mean for us and what does it mean for Ali and, what sort of potential is she going to have? And, so our world was kind of put into a bit of disruption and self-reflection. She's now 19. She's a rock star. She's gone through, the normal schooling sort of way of life. And my wife actually founded a charity and her and I work to try and open people's minds and provide opportunities for young kids and adults with Down syndrome. And so there's a physical piece around moving bodies through dance and creative because they just fly with music and creative. And then there's also an education piece to bridge young adults with Down syndrome between high school and into meaningful employment. And so my wife's charity has set up an education stream with Torrens University, which gives them employment-ready education, a university course, if you will, and then provides them meaningful employment at the back end of that. And so it's very much a big part of our life.
Oh, fantastic. Luke, thank you for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you very much.
That was Luke Sayers, founder and executive chair of Sayers. This is a Fear and Greed daily interview. Join me every morning for the full Fear and Greed podcast with all the business news you need to know. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.